Hi, I'm Dr. Muscle, and in this video we'll be talking about what's known as the square of opposition. This is very useful when it comes to inferring certain things about the truth values of claims based on knowing something about the truth value of corresponding claims. So we'll have to cover a few basic things here first before we dive into the various relationships that are shown on the square of opposition. First, one of the things I just mentioned, right, with this notion of corresponding claims, and I should say actually from the outset that we are dealing once again with standard form claims. So inferring certain things about the truth values of these various standard form claims based on what we know about the truth values of other standard form claims that correspond. So we're dealing with, once again, standard form claims, right? A standard form claim, all S are P, E no S are P, I some S are P, and O some S are not P. Okay, and then as I mentioned, another very important sort of concept is this notion of corresponding claims. Right, so what this means is basically two claims correspond to one another provided the same terms are in both their subject and predicate, right? So the first blank here is the same as the first blank in the corresponding claim, right? So, and the same thing is true of the predicate or the second blank, right? So, in other words, let's say I had a standard form A claim of all cats are animals. The E claim would correspond provided it was no cats or animals, right? It has the same thing, cats, in the subject term, and the same thing, animals, as the predicate term. So those two claims would be said to correspond, right? They're corresponding claims. And so again, we're dealing with standard form claims, and they are said to correspond provided we have the exact same term in both the subject and the predicate. Okay? So once we lay that basic groundwork, then we're in a position to talk about these various relationships that we can know to hold true. So this is the square of opposition, right, is what this whole thing is known as. And for better or worse, you just want to commit it to memory. It is interesting, sort of the things it allows us to infer based on knowing the truth values of one particular standard form claim. We can then infer oftentimes many things about the truth values of corresponding standard form claims. So we'll see how that works here in a moment. So there's different relationships here indicated. For example, the contraries, what are known as the contraries, the subcontraries, the contradictories, and also one thing that one type of relationship that I don't recall the authors of our textbook really talking about much, if at all, is this notion of entailment. And so I'll mention a little bit about that as well. So first, the notion of the contraries. So the relationship between corresponding A and E standard form claims is known as, these are known as contraries. And why? Well, because they can't both be true. So in other words, if we know the truth value of a standard form A claim, let's say all cats are animals, if we know that's true, well, then we can automatically infer, right, that the idea of the corresponding E claim, no cats are animals, has to be false. Okay, no matter what, we have substituted for both subjects and both predicates in these corresponding claims. If A is true, E will not be true, and if E is true, A will not be true. Okay, they can never both be true. And the similar sort of thing applies then with respect to what are known as the subcontraries. But here we're dealing with an I standard form claim and an O standard form claim. Okay? And here, instead of them not being able to both be true, they can't both be false. Okay? So if it's false that some snakes are poisonous snakes, then it can't also be false that some snakes are not poisonous snakes. Okay, one of them, right, if this one's false, then this one will have to be true. And if this is false, then this one would have to be true. Okay, so again, if we know something about the truth values, specifically if we know this is false, the I standard form claim is false, right, then we can automatically infer that the corresponding O standard form claim has to be true, okay, because these will never both be false. Okay. Then we have what are known as the contradictories, and that depicts the relationship between the A and O standard form claims that correspond, and also the I and E standard form claims that correspond. Okay, and this works in both directions here, A to O and I to E. And what we can sort of deduce or know is that they will never have the same truth value. So again, if we know that this is true, all cats are animals is true, then we know that some cats are not animals has to be false because they will never have the same truth value. Okay. And if we know that some snakes are poisonous snakes is true, then this will have to be false. The idea that no snakes are poisonous snakes would have to be false, right? So they'll never have the same truth value. If you know the truth value of one, then you can automatically infer the truth value of the opposite in terms of this relationship. Okay? And then finally, we have the idea of entailment. This works in one direction, and it's on both sides here. So if we know that all cats are animals is true, well, that's going to entail that this is also true, that the corresponding I-form claim is also going to be true. So if all cats are animals is true, then it has to be the case that some cats are animals is also true. Okay, same thing here. If we know that no dogs or cats is true, right, then that's going to entail that this corresponding O claim is also true. That some dogs are not cats would also be true. So again, if one is true, right, and on this side the E standard form claim is true, then we know that the one it entails, the corresponding O claim, would also be true. Okay, so A entails I and E entails O. Okay, so once we've sort of fleshed out those basic relationships between the corresponding standard form claims, then we can oftentimes deduce, and this is what you had to do in some of your homework exercises, deduce the truth values of the corresponding claims. Okay, so let's go ahead and just run through a few examples here. And I'll try to just squeeze it in down here so that we can still have this relationship depicted up here. So let's start with a claim here. And what do I have? All kitties are cute creatures. Okay, and let's say that we know this is true. Okay. Well, then we know, based on knowing the truth value of that A standard form claim, right, we're going to be able to tell that the corresponding E standard form claim, no kitties are cute creatures, that's going to have to be false because they can't both be true. And of course, if you just think about it intuitively, that makes sense, right? If you know that all kitties are cute creatures, well, then it sounds false to say that no kitties are cute creatures, right? Okay, so, and we also know, right, by way of this notion of entailment, okay, that if it's true that all kitties are cute creatures, right, then it's going to be true that some kitties are cute creatures as well. So that's going to have to be true. Okay. And we also know, right, something about the O standard form corresponding claim, right? Since we know this is true, the O will have to have the opposite truth value. All right, so some kitties are not cute creatures. Oops. That's going to have to be false, okay, because the A and the O standard form claims, corresponding claims, will never have the same truth value. And again, intuitively, if we think about that, that makes sense, right? If we know it's true that all kitties are cute creatures, it wouldn't make sense to say that some kitties are not cute creatures, right? That has to be false. Okay, so there's an example where we just started off with knowing the truth value of one standard form claim, and we could deduce what the truth value was of all the other corresponding standard form claims. Okay, let's try another one. Let's start with an E, a standard form E claim. We'll have no freshmen are football players. And let's say we know that that is false. But look, there are some that are. Okay. Well, what can we figure out about the rest of the corresponding standard form claims? Okay. Well, right off the bat, I always like to start with contradictories because once you know the truth value of any one of these, you can go to the contradictory and infer the truth value of the other ones, right? So E, the contradictory of that is the I, okay, which would be some, the corresponding I claim would be some freshmen are football players. Okay, and since we know that the E and the I can't have the same truth value, since the E was said to be false, well then I would have to be true. Okay? So if no freshmen are football players is false, right, then it has to be the case. It has to be true that some freshmen are in fact football players. Okay. Now, can we deduce anything else? Let's try the A. All freshmen. Now, we know that some are football players, right? That's true. But is it the case that all freshmen are football players? Well, we know that this is false, right? But that doesn't allow us to infer anything by way of this relationship of the contraries, right? If this was true, then we know that this couldn't also be true, but these could both be false, right? So just because this one's false, we can't infer anything about the corresponding A claim, okay? We know that I is true, but we can't infer anything this way, right? We know that by way of entailment that if A is true, I has to be true, but we don't know by way of entailment that just because some football or freshmen are football players that all of them will be, right? We can't infer that either. So this we actually can't deduce just by starting off with knowing that no freshmen are football players is false. We can't know the truth value of the corresponding A claim. So we'll put a big question mark there. And then the last one, O, some freshmen are not football players. Okay, so can we infer anything about the corresponding O claim, right? We started off knowing that E is false, okay? Well, we can't deduce anything about O by way of entailment because, right, it only works with respect to knowing that the E claim is true. If that was the case, then we infer that O is also true, but we don't know that, right? So we can't deduce anything about O based on knowing that E is false. What about knowing that I is true? Well, we can't deduce that O is true or false based on knowing that I is true, right? We would know if I was false that O would have to be false because both the subcontraries can't both be false, right? But they could both be true, okay? So it might be the case that some freshmen are football players and that some freshmen are not football players. Those could both be true. Okay, so once again, we're not in a position, and since we don't know the truth value of the A claim, right, we can't infer that the O is going to have the opposite value. Well, that's always going to be true, but we can't determine what the truth value of the O claim is because we don't know the truth value of the A claim, right? If we knew the A claim was true, then by way of this notion of contradictories, right, we know that O is false. Or if A we knew to be false, then we know O is true, but we don't know the truth value of the A claim, right? So we also then don't know the truth value of the corresponding O claim. Okay. Let's do at least one more here. Hopefully you can see this. I'm sorry that it's all scrunched in here. Wish I had a bigger board here. So let's go with an I claim. Some dogs are violent creatures. And let's say that we know that that is true. What can we infer then? So we're starting at the I, and we know that that is true. Some dogs are violent creatures. Well, again, I like to work with the contradictories because right off the bat, we can always know the truth value of at least one corresponding claim, namely the contradictory, right? We know it's going to have the opposite truth value. So with respect to the corresponding E claim, which in this case would be no dogs are violent creatures, we know that since some dogs are violent creatures is true, that the idea that no dogs are violent creatures, that's going to have to be false. Okay. So, because again, the contradictories, I and E, can't ever have the same truth value. Okay, now, can we deduce anything about A or O? Let's see. So we started off knowing that this is true, right? Entailment won't work this way, okay? And we know, thanks to the notion of contradictories, that the E was false, okay? But we can't deduce anything about the truth value of A based on knowing that E was false. Now, if E was true, again, we could know that they both can't be true, in which case this would have to be false. But Again, both of these could be false. So knowing that E is false doesn't allow us to infer anything about A's truth value. Okay. So it doesn't look like we're going to be in a position to say anything about the truth value of A here. Let's write it in. All dogs are violent creatures. Again, it would appear that we can't deduce anything about the truth value of A. Right? At least not yet. Now, if we can deduce the truth value of O, we know that A will have the opposite. So let's see if we can do that. So some dogs are not violent creatures. Can we deduce the truth value of that? So we know that this is true, but just knowing that that's true won't allow us to infer anything about the truth value of O, right? Because they both could be true. It could be true that some dogs are violent creatures, and at the same time that some dogs are not violent creatures. Okay, so that could also be true, but it could be false too. Right? So we can't infer anything about the truth value of O when we start off knowing that I is true. Okay. And we can't infer anything about O because, right, if E was true, then we'd be able to infer that O is true, but all we know is that E is false. Okay. So that won't allow us to infer anything. Knowing that E is false won't allow us to infer anything about the truth value of the corresponding O claim. Okay? And again, we don't know the A claim, the truth value of the A claim, so if we did, we could infer that O would be the opposite, right? If A was true, then O would be false, or if A was false, then O would be true, but we don't know the truth value of A. So it seems like then that we also won't know, ultimately, the truth value of O. So if we start off knowing that an I standard form claim is true, all we'll be able to deduce from that is that the corresponding E standard form claim will be false. We won't be able to determine the truth values of the corresponding A or O standard form claims. Let's do one last one. So let's start with an O claim. Some cows are not animals. And let's say we know that is false. Okay? So what can we infer based on knowing that this standard form O claim is false? What can we infer about the corresponding standard form claims? Well, we're in a nice position here. We're going to be able to infer something about the contradictory to A, because as long as we know the truth value of O, we'll always know the truth value of A because it's going to be the opposite, right? And if one of these is false, right, we're going to be able to deduce that the opposite has to be true because these both can't both be false, right? So let's go ahead and fill in I right off the bat. So some cows are animals. Look, that can't be false if this is false, right? So that's going to have to be true. So if it's false that some cows are not animals, then it has to be true that some cows are animals, okay? And if we have the truth values of both these, by way of contradictories, we're going to be able to infer the truth values of both A and E then, right? So we'll know that A, all cows are animals. That's going to have to be true because it's always going to have the opposite truth value of O. So if some cows are not animals is false, then it'll have to be true that all cows are animals. Okay? And then E, no cows are animals. Again, they can't both be true, E and A, right? So if A is true, we already know right off the bat that the corresponding E claim will have to be false. And another way we can infer that E is false is because we know that I is true, and these will never have the same truth value. Okay, so as long as we know, so basically a sort of shortcut here, as long as you know that either an I or O standard form claim is false, you will ultimately be able to deduce the truth values of all the corresponding claims. And similarly, if you know the truth values of an A or E claim is true, the same thing holds. You'll be able to then infer the truth values of all the others. But on the other hand, if you know that an I or O is true, then you'll only be able to infer the truth value of one other corresponding claim, right? And if you know that an A or E claim is false, then you'll only be able to infer the truth value of one other. So that sounds like a lot there. Hopefully that was more clear than it seems to me that it was. Basically, again, I'll reiterate real quick what we can infer. If you know the truth value of an I or O, right, then one of them is false. You will be able to infer the truth value of all the other corresponding claims. Okay, so as long as one of these is known initially to be false, you'll be able to figure out all the other truth values. Same thing holds with respect to A and E if you know that one of them is true to begin with. Okay. So that there is the square of opposition. A lot of interesting relationships depicted on it, and it's kind of cool, I think, how you can infer the truth value of these corresponding claims just based on sometimes knowing the truth value of only one of them to start with. So logic is full of kind of these interesting relationships. This is another example, and I know I've said this repeatedly in the other videos, another example of something that if you just practice with it, go through and do a bunch of these kinds of examples, it'll become more and more like it's your second nature, right? That it just comes naturally to you. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and good luck again on your homework and quizzes.